everybody. This is your girl Andulairah here, and I have a very special guest today. Mr. Samuel Chong is joining us from Los Angeles, and Samuel is coming to us today to talk to us about the Thayuba prophecy. And this was first brought to us by Michel Desmarquet, who was a Frenchman, I think a naturalized citizen to Australia, and he had the most phenomenal encounter of his life, and he was taken to a faraway planet known as Thayuba many years ago. I would like to introduce Samuel. How are you, Samuel, today?
Very good, and thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. So Samuel actually comes from, obviously he's from China, but he's now based in Los Angeles. That's correct?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and he is a certified court interpreter and a Chinese translator. And you were actually instrumental in arranging for the Chinese publication of Michel's book, The Thayuba Prophecy. Is that correct?
Yes, for China and Taiwan, yes.
Yeah, fantastic. So would you like to first explain how you actually came across the Thayuba Prophecy and how that's actually being involved with your life now? How has that impacted your life now?
Yeah, the first time that I came across the book, Thayuba Prophecy, was back in 2014. I was searching on the internet on Amazon, trying to find a book of ET contactees, because I was trying to learn from the messages given by the ETs in order for us to advance at a much faster pace. Because I was thinking if they could come to visit us and if they have an advanced civilization, we can just take the shortcut and learn from them, learn from their technologies, learn from their ways of living, so that we can just progress, imitate them and progress at a much faster pace. So I searched on Amazon for ET contactees and UFOs and things like that, and this book came out. It was selling very expensively at that time, so I checked it out from a local library through their interlibrary loan services, and I read the book. I was shocked and amazed at the content, especially the part on who is Christ. That chapter, really, I couldn't put the book down because it's just so fascinating, connecting all the dots about the stories in the Bible. I didn't believe anything in the Bible before I read this book, but now I do believe that Christ and Jesus, they were actual beings that came to help us. And then I read a postscript. It says there are more incredible things that Michel was not allowed to write in the book because we were far from understanding them. So that got me extremely, extremely curious. I wanted to find out more. What's more incredible in the book? Because everything that the book talks about is already fascinating, incredible enough. What's more incredible that he was not allowed to write and reveal to us? So with that in mind, I wanted to track him down and to find out where he was living at that time. So I searched on the internet and found that there were some tourists who came across him and accidentally and took photos with him and of him, but still I didn't know where he was at that time, exactly the exact address. I knew he was living on southern Vietnamese island, and so I took the chance and I flew to that island, and I landed at the airport and showed one of the photos on the internet that showed where he was living at that time, a bungalow. And I said to the taxi driver, please, I need to go there and see this photo. And then the taxi driver nodded on his head. He says, I will try. And then the second time he tried, and he found where Michel Desmarquet was living at that time, a bungalow, like a hostel, like a hotel, motel. There I met him. Yeah.
Yeah. So because obviously I read the book, I have, an old copy back in, I think I got this in 2009. And I know that obviously I read the book, and at the time Michel was he actually had a nursery, a plant nursery up in Cairns, which is in far north Queensland at the top of Australia. And after this encounter and after the publishing of the book, he wanted to kind of disappear from the public eye and went to this island, I think it's called Phu Quoc.
Yes, Foucault.
I read how he wanted to disappear from, his newfound publicity after publishing this book. So when you actually, and by the way, I do want to point out that you actually visited in 2016, 2018, yes. And he actually passed in 2018. Is that correct?
Yes, about 3 or 4 months after I met him the second time.
Was he in ill health when you saw him the second time, or?
No, he was very healthy.
Okay. So how did you actually approach him when you saw him the first time?
Well, the first time I met him, and he was actually pretty annoyed at me. He was a very private person, and he really didn't want me to purposely finding him and to ask him questions about the book. And I did try to ask a lot of questions, including what he was not allowed to write in the book. And he just said, read the book in his thick French accent. Yeah. Read the book, like something like that. And then, like, at that time, I only read the book like twice or so. And indeed, there were some questions that were answered in the book that I was still asking him, and he was kind of impatient with me, and we played chess together.
Oh, so you did spend some time with him. You did spend time.
5 days.
Oh, 5 days. Okay, so eventually, after he was initially annoyed with you, when he became more friendly.
Well, he was aloof and annoyed at me for the first 3 days or so. And then the fourth day, he showed me a contract that he signed with a publisher in China. He said, well, Samuel, this publisher paid me $2,000 to get the copyright to have the book published in China. But I never heard from him, from the publisher anymore. Could you please follow up for me? So I that's what I did. I was trying to cater to his wishes, trying to do something for him so that he could possibly change his mind and reveal information. So I gladly accepted that request, and I followed up with the publisher after I returned to the US, to Los Angeles. What happened was that the publisher decided not to publish the book in China because they were afraid of the Christians in China writing complaint letters to the government. And the publisher says that if the book were to be published by them, then every one of them would lose their jobs. And that's why they decided to postpone the publication. In China, when they say postpone, that means it's never going to get published. So I told Michel that this is what they said, and what would you like me to do? He said, go find other publishers, either in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, or even Singapore. As long as it's published in Chinese, then I'm fine. So that's what happened. What happened was that I contacted many publishers in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and China. There was no major publisher in Singapore, so I didn't even try. And all publishers refused and rejected the manuscript, even though it was already translated into Chinese. And finally, I had to contact a personal friend of mine whose mother used to be one of the main editors of a major publishing house in China. And finally, the book was published as a science fiction in China. And Michel, he was very particular about having the book published in Chinese language. And I even said to him, what if the Chinese government, the censorship, wants to remove like a few sentences or even a chapter of the book? Would you still willing to have it published in China? He said yes. So he was really adamant about it.
Yeah. Okay. So eventually he became more friendly, and he obviously relaxed around you. So did you keep in touch And then obviously following up with your second visit in 2018, did he actually welcome you this time to spend time with him and sit with him?
Yes, after the first trip to Vietnam, I came back to Los Angeles, and I kept in touch with him through his niece, Lily.
Mm-hmm.
He really didn't know how to type. He was a computer illiterate. So everything had to go through his niece, who typed everything that he dictated to her. So we kept in touch through that way. And finally, one day, I received an email from him saying that he was really surprised that he received a telepathic message from Tao, the ET in the book, saying that she was very happy about the works that I did.
Oh,
And
good.
then, yes, and he said he didn't know how Tao knew about it. But Tao was very happy, and he was extremely surprised that Tao allowed him to reveal the one thing that he was not allowed to write in the book. But I had to take a second trip to Vietnam, because he had to meet me in person and tell that to me personally. So
Okay.
that's what I did.
Yeah. And can you reveal what he actually shared with you, or do you have to keep that under wraps as well?
I can share you some of the background information, how I met him the second time, how that information was revealed to me. I can give you some clues and hints, but to the exact information, I cannot do that, because he said Tao told him not to reveal it to any other person. So
Fair
I have
enough.
to keep the promise.
Yes,
But
yeah.
they didn't say that I couldn't write an article and like write a puzzle out of it. So that's what I did. I can send you the article
Sure.
when yes.
Sure. So Tao is actually the main, I guess, chaperone for Michelle when he first had his encounter. So let's talk a little bit about the encounter itself. So it occurred, I think, in the mid 80s, and Michelle was woken up at midnight one night in his house, and he said he was guided, very oddly enough, to put his clothes on, write a note to his wife saying, "My darling, I'm going to be away for 10 days. Don't worry about me. I'll be back soon." And then he said he went outside and he was greeted by, Tao, who is this incredibly beautiful 8, 9 feet tall being, that was there to take him aboard their ship and go through a method of transubstantiation, which is a mode of travel, obviously, that we don't have on our planet, but allow them to visit Thayuba, which only took, I think, a couple of days to actually reach the planet itself, covering vast distances. So I think the first part of the trip, they did travel with the means, many multiples of the speed of light. And then they switched to this transubstantiation, which covered pretty much you go through one portal and immediately you appear in another point in time space. But one thing I think it's good for the viewers to know about, and I've actually spoken about this in past interviews, is that before, well, as they were about to embark and get up on the ship, they came to a bubble, a parallel reality, a parallel universe that exists and is stuck in time, and it just repeats itself. This is like a time slip, or a slip in our energetic congruency with our realities. And so it's like you say, it's very much, these places exist on our planet. We may not see them, but they are there. For example, the Bermuda Triangle is one of them. They accidentally slip into these bubbles, into these slips, and they're stuck there. And so Michelle, he was witness to Thao having to, basically end the life of one of these, I think it was a beast or something that was going to attack them or kill them. And Michelle remarked, saying how there were people that looked like they were from, the 17th century. They were still dressed in old-fashioned clothes. I think that's one of them. And some that still look like cavemen. Is that correct?
That's correct. Like savages, like cavemen.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the only way out was for them to have their, she was basically doing them a service by ending their life so they could go back into the reincarnational cycle and continue on their journey, because otherwise they're basically existing in a state of, suspended animation, basically, where they're not dying, they're not aging, they're not doing anything. They're just repeating, pretty much just living in that suspended time period, which is, kind of a curse, isn't it?
Yes, and the other solution is to send them back to where they originally came from. But for some reason, if they were sent back, then they wouldn't know how to respond or how to deal with their lives, because everything is so different from when they went there or they got sucked into the parallel universe.
Yeah.
So that's the explanation. I found that part to be very interesting, especially the description in the parallel universe, matching the description of some of the missing people or their corpse found in U.S. national parks, as documented by David Paulides. He wrote a series of books describing how people or hikers who just gone vanished. And but when their corpses were found, it seemed to him that they didn't feel any pain, or some of the strange results were something like they walked to their bones, and they had the injuries inflicted on themselves, or they didn't feel the temperature at all. So this matches the description of the book Theory of Prophecy when they were in the parallel universe, where time stops and they don't feel any pain or hunger or thirst, or they don't feel any other kind of the sensations that we feel here.
That's right. So, and it is, quite interesting to note that these realities actually exist, and that the realities that we have been conditioned to believe, this linear time space reality that, we've been taught since the day we're born, is actually erroneous, and we are surrounded by so many other layers of dimensions and realities, an infinite amount actually, that exist around us, and they kind of bleed through our own realities. Obviously, it's a type of physics that is very hard to try and understand or to ever put into words. But I think just the fact that if an individual is open to just accepting that there's so many things that we don't understand or that we can't explain, and that our conventional science, especially, in the world of academia, it's just so far behind, and it's letting us down. It's kind of hindering our efforts to expand our knowledge in those areas, and really being open to new ideas. So I actually think that people just simply being open to the idea that these other realities exist is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, that's right. I'm still taking classes at a local community college, anthropology, archaeology, and the professor asked us to write a paper, and I chose the topic of the pyramid, and also some other interesting topics. But the professor requested me to find peer-reviewed journals or academic papers, and I searched, and there is just nothing that mentions anything about the Great Pyramid as an energy center or anything like that. So I think the academic world is far behind the science, the real science. I mean, it's just unfortunate that everything has to be peer-reviewed. What if the peers are lagging behind? I mean,
I absolutely understand your frustration, because I study astrophysics at university, and even that itself, everything has to be peer reviewed as well. The frustration, somebody that's obviously open to other knowledge and other information. However, you can never get that stamp of approval or having that peer reviewed, because obviously a lot of this information is off world. It's come from star people. How could you ever get that peer reviewed? How would that ever be taken serious? And so I've often said to people, instead of focusing on the origins of the information, just focus on the content, focus on the context of the actual information and see if it actually makes sense, because most of it does.
Yeah. So a lot of interesting information and the facts contained in the book are actually verifiable, if not now, but maybe in the future. For example, when the book was written in the late 80s or published in the early 90s, a lot of people didn't know about the ET bases on the far side of the moon, the back side of the moon. A lot of people didn't know that there was life forms on Mars. And not many people knew about the tomb of Jesus Christ in Shingo Village, Japan. But this book talks about everything so specifically and in details that people actually can verify. And what really struck westward, in which NASA released hundreds of millions of needles into space in the 1960s. So people can look up Project Westward, and it's actually written in this book as well, The Theory of Prophecy. So I find this book to be very, very different from other ET contactees books. A lot of the other books just read about the author's experiences with no verifiable facts that people can look up,
Yes.
and also with no solutions to the current day problems. But this book contains everything, resolves all the mysteries, the paranormals on Earth, and gives solutions to our real day lives.
Let's go into the detail as to why the information in the book may be sensitized, or, you know, why you had such difficulty getting it published in Chinese. Obviously, it contradicts a lot of the information actually put out in the Bible, because Michelle actually says, Dale giving this information to Michelle, saying that Jesus actually died not on the cross, but actually in an area in Japan, correct?
Yes, that's Jesus, but Christ died on the cross. So there are two beings here.
Right.
The reason of the Chinese government censoring such information, actually they didn't censor that chapter out. They didn't. But I was so afraid of them censoring that chapter out because that's the important information for people to know. The Chinese government only took out a few sentences relating to communism, and also relating to the Tiananmen Square incident that happened in 1989.
Okay.
And other than that, that's everything was kept in full, in entirety. So the Michelle told me personally that there was a lot of resistance from Christians or the Catholic Church regarding the content of the book. He said that the book was a bestseller in Australia, but then when the Catholic Church discovered about it, they cracked down on this book. This is what he told me. I don't know whether that's true or not, but this is what he told me personally.
I actually, someone as a researcher that has actually, absorbed that information from the book, but then to actually corroborate that information with other knowledge that has obviously come from elsewhere, usually off-world. And I noticed a correlation when I read through some of the Seth material. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Seth material, but it was actually channeled information from a trance channeler known as Jane Roberts. And she actually speaks of, the truth about Christ and Jesus as well being another being, and it didn't actually happen the way it's actually reported in the Bible. So there seems to be a lot of distorted information and saturation in the Bible that actually is not actually the truth as to what happened.
Yeah, what's different about the Theory of Prophecy is that it gives specific information on that point, specifically about the 4 church council meetings that intentionally distorted the original meanings of the scriptures in the Bible. And also is very specific about where Jesus died in Japan, in Shingo Village, and is description is so detailed that it talks about another tomb next to the tomb of Jesus, which is the tomb of his brother, that contains like a hair, like some hair of his brother. So that's very specific information that people can actually verify. So that's why this book is so particular and so interesting, at least to me personally.
Yeah. Okay. So have you actually visited the site in Japan? Have you actually gone to the gravesite?
No, I haven't, but I plan to do in the next 2 years or so.
Okay, fantastic. Let's talk more about Michelle's visit to the actual planet Theuba and how different it is to, obviously Earth. And the book in the beginning was called Abduction to the Ninth Planet is that Theuba, according to Thao, is the ninth planet indicates that they are absolutely at the top of what they would categorize as a paradisical lifestyle and life. The planet is so far advanced and so superior to anything that's in existence. They would be at the top tier, whereas Earth, I think it's still a category 1 planet, the planet of sorrows. I think it's typically referred to, being that we are essentially a highly aggressive species. A lot of us are not that. However, this is the brush that we've been tarnished with, because we're a warring world. We are a world that is not cohesive. We are a world that has imbalance, and we have no equality. We pollute our world. We create all this mess, and yet there is no solution to clean it up. Nothing is working effectively here, and essentially we are killing our planet. And so as a researcher, this is the one message that is just hit home so hard with all the star people having star people coming to planet Earth. Bottom line is they all say, or at least give imagery of, we are killing our planet. If you do not stop, you're going to become extinct. You're killing your planet. Your planet is dying. That's the biggest message that could be corroborated across the board with anyone that's had encounters. I seem to think that this is the biggest message.
Yes, that's the biggest message in this book as well. But it also gives a solution to how, regarding how we can respond to the situation and how we can save the destiny of Earth, which is to imitate what Archie did on his planet. And the detailed descriptions in the book basically is just to follow what Gandhi did in India, nonviolent resistance, to go and act in a concerted fashion against tyranny. So this is very unique about this book, is that it gives a very, very interesting solution. But when you think about it, it makes sense, because we are actually living in like a planned system, like a system that we are actually slaves of the financial system such as the Federal Reserve of the US, and also some of the other financial institutions. And if we go act in a concerted fashion, like having a strike, then we would lose very little. It's the financiers, the bankers, that would lose the most, because no one would be working for them anymore. No one would be continuously enslaved by them. So this is a very good solution, and do that in a non-violent way is the key. That's going to bring more attention to other people, and so that they can join us in force.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And I actually, speak about this a lot on my channel, saying how it's in our best interest to try and move away from this monetary slave system as much as you can, even if it's a small way. Growing a garden. I'm always talking about growing your own food, your own garden, having your own water source, and learning how to survive without all the luxuries that we have available, and this accessibility that's just at our fingertips. As a human species, we've become lazy at knowing how to actually survive. We can see from past example that just taking away something as mere and secondary as toilet paper, how ridiculous people become. And I mean, obviously it can bring the best and the worst out of people, but the majority, it looked like it was bringing the worst out of people. And people just automatically go into this primitive behavior where it's, each to their own, and it's all about self-preservation and self-conservation and trying to get as much as they can. People have to know that there is another way and there is another form of abundance other than money. We can live without money, but collectively it needs to be a joint effort.
Exactly. I studied economics and economic history and financial analysis in college. And I was so into earning more money and more money in the financial market. And I didn't realize that the Fed, the Federal Reserve Bank, was actually a semi-private institution. And no matter how much money I make or earned, they could always print more money. So, for example, even Warren Buffett earns like billions of dollars, and they could just print hundreds of billions of dollars to dilute Warren Buffett's investment earnings or investment returns. So this is why I think some of the people in the financial world should really think about this and realize that they're also part of the slaves in the whole system.
Yes, all they're doing is perpetuating this system that only benefits a few. We can only see when we visit other places or watch documentaries around the world that this is not an effective system. There are people that are still starving on our planet. There are people that cannot afford to survive and just live with basic necessities. That in itself is just, it's so unacceptable. And yet we're still living on that world. We're living on this planet where this system has been in place forever. And for thousands of years, the human race has been pretty much a slave race, subservient to someone or something. And there's always been this denomination and this order from the most noble, most powerful, the most richest to the lowly. And it's forever been that way, because this is essentially how whoever is in charge is keeping control.
Yes, Michelle, he told me in person that Tao told him that there were 12 families in the world running everything behind the scenes. And I asked him like who the 12 families were, and he said he didn't know that either. But the Catholic Church was one of the most involved religious organizations doing this. So this is very interesting because I didn't know that the Catholic Church was that powerful. And then later on, when I talked to my Protestant pastors, and they said yes, the Catholic Church is extremely powerful. Yeah.
These 12 families were, at least in this modern day era, I don't know how far they stem back throughout history, but the power and the wealth simply is being filtered back to them, and they can absolutely harness this power over the masses. And like you said earlier, if people could just understand this, and they will have to compromise and give up certain luxuries, such as, using these devices and placing so much importance on money. If they could move away from this system, then we get our own power back. But because the more that we move away from this system, the less power that they can flex over the masses. As soon as we move away from their control, there's nothing they can do except what? Create an all-out war and blitz us out of existence.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a person named Ronald Bernard. He is a Dutch banker. he was a Dutch banker. He used to work for members of the Illuminati. And he said in very clear and specific manner that the world financial system is actually still centered around the Bank of International Settlements and BIS. And he says if everyone knows about the system, everyone would know that everyone is enslaved by the whole financial system of the world. And he's actually trying to change the world by making a system that doesn't really rely on what we currently have here. And Michel, he was shown the cultures and civilizations of Lemuria, where they didn't have money at all. People just took everything they needed from the market and voluntarily, and they didn't take advantage of anyone else. So that's actually the ideal system or ideal scenario that we are looking forward to having.
Yes.
But I think people just need to realize that it could happen, it's doable, and we just need to work towards that goal.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think a lot of people feel helpless and powerless, thinking, how can I make a difference? You absolutely can make a difference in your own individual life. And it may be small, but the difference is felt. And there is a vibrational shift. And actually, some other information from some star people, which was given in the 1950s, they talk about how the information they actually speak about how the way of these civilizations in the past, such as those of Lemuria or Atlantis, how they came about, and it started with the imparting of some knowledge from the star people, and it had a rippling effect. And after these people had absorbed this knowledge and put it into their life and daily reality, other people started seeing this other way. And so it started influencing them. And then collectively, over time, this new civilization developed. So it is very tangible. But the problem is, and the issue is these days, is that people are so distracted with technology. They're so distracted with the saturation of social media and apps and video games, because these video games, it's like virtual reality. It's so real. People get lost in this and no longer even want to exist within this earthly reality. So it's a real addiction, and it's changing, the state of the brain, the brainwave state, and neurological pathways within the brain. Like there's some permanent change happening because of this influx of the digital age, this technology that's just at everybody's fingertips now. And now most people cannot live without these devices or without these so-called luxuries in the world. So it's going to take an effort for people to consciously really move away from what they know and introducing something new into their life. But it can be done. It can be done.
So that's why Tao says the real danger is not another nuclear war. It's actually the way that people live their lives. So that's the real danger in the foreseeable future. So the most important thing is to use technology to assist in the spiritual advancement of the people, and not to really hinder our spiritual growth. So I think that's the central theme, one of the central themes of the book, which I find to be very interesting. The use of color and sound vibrations, and also some of the other technologies that can help the world to be a better world, such as the hydrogen engines, for example.
Yeah, color therapy is actually something I'm, very passionate about. Sound therapy in the form of, good music made on the frequency of 432. What's interesting to know on the planet Theuber is that they all wear clothing according to their auric field and their auric colors. So, for example, if the aura is showing perhaps more of a red tone, they would naturally wear blue. that
Yeah.
would go according, matching their auric fields, which I found quite fascinating.
Yeah. Uh, someone knocked the door. The delivery person just delivered something that I've been trying to make, the color therapy clothing.
Wow.
It's actually like made of different small like different colored dots, colorful dots.
Yeah.
Um, I know there are some people trying to develop color therapy clothing, um, and I'm trying to make it more um, like adaptable to everyone's aura colors by having all the colors show up on the fabric.
Hmm.
So as colorful dots,
Yeah.
and because like people have different aura colors, so the first step that I'm trying to do is to make a more like a general one in which everyone can wear, just to stimulate the different energy points of the body or astral body, and so that after wearing this, people would be more energized in the sense that this is a colorful stimulation.
Yeah.
Um, I'm still trying and trying to improve it.
At least you are trying. At least you are, developing, and you're actually putting your ideas to practice.
Yes.
I don't think people realize how important color therapy and sound therapy actually is. And color therapy, there's actually been a lot of research in our recent history about that. Color therapy involves the spectrum, the visible spectrum. Any weakness or any illness in your body is existing in your auric field first before it actually even manifests in your physical body. A lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, it's only after I read this book, Theory of Prophecy, that I learned about the human energy field, the auras, and I specifically looked for people who could see auras using their eyes, and I found certain people, and it's amazing. And I think Barbara Brennan is one of them. She wrote several books, Hands of Light, and also other people like Rosalind Berry, and they give a lot of very interesting readings. And when they see like a darkness, like a grayish color in the liver, normally about 3 or 6 months later, the physical symptoms would be manifested. And actually, the aura system are actually I mean, the aura system has certain energy points as well, and that's why the ancient Chinese people developed the acupuncture system as a way of treating different kinds of people. Because from what I learned, in the ancient past in Chinese culture, there were some people or doctors who could see the blockages of the energy points of the patients, and they would use the needles to remove or maybe make the energy flow, removing the blockages. But then some years later, there are fewer and fewer people who could see the blockages from by their naked eyes. So that's why they developed this kind of acupuncture system, the meridians, and so that um, future doctors who cannot see auras or energy points just go by the system and to put the needles in certain acupressure points.
Yes, yeah. And obviously with conventional medicine, the development of basically invasive surgery that, really is kind of archaic in its foundation is so unnecessary if we actually spend, I think, more of our energy towards developing chromotherapy or color therapy, understanding just how easy it is and effective it is once it's been in practical application. How people can just heal, very quickly if you understand, the way color works, because it all goes back to that biophotonic energy and whatever your body is lacking. So if you've got weakness, perhaps in your heart area, if there's some type of weakness or you have illness or damage, if you sit under a green window or even a blue window, putting patients under blue glass, colored blue glass. You could even get away with using cellophane, which actually cools down the inflammatory conditions that are present in the body and can balance out the weakness again. And patients have reported saying they feel the difference almost instantaneously. A half an hour of sitting or sunbaking under this glass, they have immediate relief.
Yes, it is very interesting you mentioned about the color blue, because remember when Michel, after Michel Desmarquet was inside of their spaceship, they actually disinfected him with yellow light and blue light. And I did some research on blue light based on the studies of Harvard Medical School, and they found out that blue color, certain wavelengths of blue color, they have antibacterial, antiviral effects. And it is anti-inflammatory because inflammation is actually caused by viral infections. So everything corroborates and matches. And so I find that to be very interesting because we can just use color chromotherapy to treat a lot of different chronic illness. And it's actually pretty popular in the 1920s. It was only after they invented or found out about antibiotics that color therapy gradually died down with the lobbyists from and people who lobbied the FDA to crack down on chromotherapy.
Yeah, yeah, which is a shame, really, isn't it? Because I mean, it was so effective, and yet the support and the backing just wasn't coming with it, and was pretty much shut down. So the lack of information, even on the internet, is quite indicative of how that's kind of been pushed out of conventional medicine, because it was never termed as conventional medicine, even though the research was empirically clear of how effective the treatment actually was, which is a shame. But it's a shame about a lot of things on this planet. It's just, it reiterates this entirely effective control system that is
based on money.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yes.
We could actually go into a little bit more detail about Michel's visit on the planet Theuba, how their people drink once every couple of days this liquid called hydromel. If only we could have something of similar properties on this planet, we could pretty much eradicate all poverty that is existing here.
I think we have something very similar, which is honey. I think honey is a very good nutritious medicinal liquid that we can drink from. And actually, according to Anthony Williams, the medical medium, honey has a lot of very therapeutic and healing properties as well. And after I drink honey, I don't feel hungry for a long time. So I think that's a kind of a secondary replacement of hydromel.
Yeah, I think it could be, but then again, we obviously, I don't know where the source of their hydromel comes from, but honey it's coming from an animal, we are taking away from something else or something else that's living. So I'm wondering how would they even process their hydromel? Obviously it's an effective food that works. They didn't really go into detail about the origins of hydromel.
Yeah, that's one detail that I didn't ask Michel when I met him.
Yeah.
But I think the book gives a very interesting clue, which is regarding the powders that Michel ate. The calories are released at certain intervals of time, gradually on gradual basis, so that they don't need to eat for a long time, maybe for 2 or 3 days or so. So I think I've been trying to find a similar technology here on Earth, but so far I haven't. I'm still trying.
Yeah. And I think in the current situation of our planet, again, it comes back to that consumerist model that's been in place for such a long time. Even if there was a solution, would it even be allowed? We have all the facilities and the utilities in the world to actually eradicate poverty, but because the system is so corrupt, it's very hard to move forward. A lot of fantastic scientists and inventors who, have basically had their lives taken from them, talking about hydrocars instead of using fossil fuels and oil and gas. A lot of star people actually talk about this free energy and these free energy devices. So not even anything from the elements. So it doesn't involve our sun, doesn't involve wind, water. They say it is just like it's within the ether. I refer to it as God's breath. It just exists throughout everything. It's like the glue that sticks everything together. And perhaps this stuff is the stuff they talk about, scientists or astronomers talk about as dark matter within our cosmos. What is this free energy that they talk about that can be harnessed? It could be utilized. And I believe that some of our greatest inventors probably are aware of it, but have been silenced. I feel like if anyone makes progress, they are, either shut up or silenced or pretty much booted out of existence on this planet.
Yes, I know you're talking about 0 point energy.
Yes.
And I think that has something that we need to look into in the future. That has a long way to go. But immediately speaking, we can just really develop a technology that can split water more effectively, split water molecules. Vibration and resonant vibrational frequency can be used to split water molecules more effectively or more efficiently than the current electrolysis. And once you find the frequency that matches the covalent bond frequency of the water molecules, you can just split the hydrogen and oxygen atoms of the water molecules at a much faster and a more economic way, so that you can extract the hydrogen atoms and to make efficient and clean energy. And I think Stanley Meyer did that in the past, I think in the 70s or 80s, but he died mysteriously before it could be commercialized. But there are still other inventors who came up with a similar type of machine. Some of them are currently in Brazil or in Greece or even in Iran and other countries. And I think the mistake that they're making is that they always try to apply for a patent.
Yes.
They always think that they're the first ones inventing this. But what they don't know is that once they apply for a US patent or a patent in their own countries, then the special interest groups would know about it, and they would either silence it or make them, the inventors, disappear, or they can buy them off. So the solution is to be more altruistic, to commercialize the technologies in a very large scale, using social media to reveal the technologies to the public immediately on mass scale. So I think that's the way to go about it. And people just have to realize that those technologies cannot be patented if they are to be more beneficial to the humankind.
Yeah. And at what point, though, is this going to be accepted? Because with these big conglomerate companies still in total control over the entire consumerist model, I think it's going to be very hard for individual inventors or people that have intelligence to create these free energy devices. I mean, it's a tough road for anyone to stand out, because, like you say, as soon as they apply for a patent, they're pretty much on the record. Then the same fate happened with, I believe his name was Dr. Eugene Malove, where I think he even applied for a patent with his free energy device. And I believe he was meant to go and sit before a panel. I can't remember what, but then I think a few days later, he was found bludgeoned to death in his hotel room. So it's almost as if people, even if they have this technology and these inventions, they cannot do anything about it. You'd have to go about it in a different way.
They have to know the patent law. Once the invention involves or poses a threat to national security, it's not going to get issued by the patent office or patent trademark office. So they have to know that free energy technology relates or relates to national security. And so that's something that they probably should have known beforehand.
Yeah.
And to be more altruistic, I mean, just think about that they can benefit from through other means, and they don't need to really be benefited from the technology. I mean, it's supposedly to be for saving the world.
Yeah. Until this model is crushed, until this consumerist model is crumbled in whatever way that will happen, whether that's a global catastrophe, because the only way I can see this model being put out of business and crumbling is some type of global catastrophic event, because I can't imagine these families suddenly waking up one day saying, oh, you know what? We're going to be altruistic today. We're going to be of the benefit of the people. We're going to help the masses. I can't imagine that ever happening unless their hand is forced from an off-world agency, off-world source. I can't imagine any other option except for global catastrophe, or their hand is forced.
Well, I think we just need to keep trying from a grassroots level and to raise people's awareness on this point, and so that more people can realize what's really going on and what's really happening around them. Just look at the pandemic. I mean, it's changing a lot of people's lives, and people still don't know what's really happened. And as a Chinese myself, I am privy to certain information that other people don't necessarily have access to. So it's people just need to open their eyes and to search for specific information, and I think they're going to be able to find the answers.
Yeah, that was actually a subject that I'm pretty reluctant to put on this interview, only because I don't want the interview taken down. And that right there, my reluctance about the sensitivity that we can even have as humans conversing and having communication, just shows you right there how much control our planet, has fallen under, that we cannot even express freely how we feel about certain things in the world. I've had videos flagged on my YouTube channel before about the, pandemic, and even though it's a very interesting subject to me, it's one that I avoid trying to talk about on here because my videos are flagged and taken down.
Yeah, I tell my friends in China about the situation here. I mean, they're pretty surprised because they thought the US and Australia and Canada supposed to have free media, but nowadays it's not the case anymore.
No, never. It's only because, again, that accessibility to technology and people can know about things in the world almost instantly as they happen. I guess that's a frightening aspect for those in power, to know so much so quickly. I guess it acts as a double-edged sword. Is there any message that you want to impart to people that they should take away from the reading of this book, Abduction to the Ninth Planet, or any of the messages through the Thayuba prophecy? Is there anything you want to leave people with?
I would say reading this book is the best investment I ever made. And I studied economics and economic history and financial analysis. So I think this book is so important for people to read, because it gives solutions to the challenges that people are facing nowadays, whether that's financial challenges or relationship issues or problems, you can find answers from this book. The solution is to really look inside of yourself, look for answers inside and not from certain gurus or religious leaders, but really look for your higher self's guidance, because the kingdom of God is within you. You can meditate and also try to concentrate and to communicate with your higher self, which connects with the source, the great ether, or the creator of the universe. So don't be so concerned and worried about the upcoming financial crisis, if that happens. And I hope that doesn't happen. But from my experiences, with the interest rate going up so much, and there is definitely going to be some kind of financial turmoil in the world next year or maybe the year after. So be ready and look for answers inside. And take this book. You can buy it on Amazon, or you can also search it online, because there are also free versions online as well. And spread the messages, because what I'm trying to do is to go on as many media platforms as possible to spread the messages of this book, because the more people know about the truth, the more strength we have, so that we can get our actions together and to act in a concerted fashion against everything that's trying to control us. And this book also reveals a lot of interesting ET technologies, besides what we talked about, color therapy and vibrational systems. It also talks about anti-gravity technologies, supersonic vibrational systems to cut the stones in a very precise manner, and also antimatter guns to really eliminate dust in space. It also reveals very interesting hidden histories in the past. For example, what happened during World War II, because Germany was also developing the atomic bomb. But the ETs, the Theobans, helped the US government, and they sided with the US government to develop the atomic bomb at a much faster pace than Germany at that time, in order to save more people from death. And they chose the lesser of the two devils. They're also revealing information about the stories in the Bible, what happened with the destruction of the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, and what happened to Moses, who really parted the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, and what is manna, and who is Jesus and who is Christ. So much information contained in the book can be really satisfying to your curiosity and also your future. So I strongly suggest people to read the book, get a book in whichever way you prefer, read the book and refer the book to your friends and families and colleagues. And also, if you have questions, contact us, and we'll help you to answer any questions that you have. You can search my name, Samuel Chong. I'm a Chinese translator, and you can also put the title of the book on the search engines, Theoba Prophecy, to find out the information about my experiences, and also some of my answers or responses to the frequently asked questions. Mm-hmm. My website is chinasona.org/Theoba with the capital letter T, and feel free to contact me.
Okay, fantastic. I'll put all your details in the description box. I think, like you say, I think the important messages from the book itself, it brings a message of hope to humanity, in that we are progressing, and our lives on Earth are one of the highest order. It's for the utmost spiritual development that we can occur within this life, work out, lessons and learning, and basically exploration of our own creativity. And we are simply put, we are expressions of the God source, and we're here to experience physical reality, no matter how hard it may seem to be at times. But we have to also look at the contrast that is put forward for us in our lives, the hardships, the contrast, the challenges. It only adds richness and benefit to us, and teaches us how to progress and learn from these experiences. And I've often said that pain and hardship can be our greatest teachers if we can look past and see how, if we become too comfortable and if we stay too comfortable and in our lives, how can we ever push the boundaries? How can we ever reveal to ourselves our true nature, our true identity of what we really are? I think, if anything, this is a fantastic read. It is such a fantastic book. And if you don't take away anything, be that it is a fantastic, true account on a man that actually was picked up and taken to a planet for 10 days. There's just such an abundant amount of information in this book. And I think if anyone reads it, will thoroughly enjoy it.
I agree. And remember when Enoch was taken by God, and then he was told to write a book. And Michel Desmarquet did the same thing. He was instructed to write a book.
Yeah.
And if you know what happened to Enoch and Noah, you can do a similar analogy or a comparison of the two.
Thank you so much for your time today, Samuel. It's been a great pleasure, and I want to say thank you for your time and your effort for producing this information and sharing it to the world.
Thank you, and let's do it together. Let's work together.
Yeah, that's right. Let's do it together.